At one point in his life, he was so poor that he had a suit, one suit, and then the knees had broken out in the suit, and that he finally gave up being an MD and went into engineering because it would allow him to start making money earlier than it would take if he had to delay another 4 years. I think sometimes people are 30, 35, 40 years old before they start actually practicing their own medical practice. And so he had a tremendous interest in being a doctor, but he applied his interest in engineering just as much as he would in medicine, and was always talking about the importance of getting an education.
He was definitely a risk taker. Some of the old letters that we found in the archives at Carver Pump from right after he started the business were very interesting. He was working at a different pump company in Mansfield, Ohio as an engineer, and in the letters we learned that he was actually more or less fired from that job. Where it's not clear on exactly what he did to lose that job, but within 6 months, not only did he get hired on by his former employer as a independent rep, but he had borrowed money from his former employer who had fired him, and then he went on to start out as a competitor with his former employer. So he was a very bold guy. After losing this job, he managed to get a loan from the person that that had fired him, and then became their competitor.
My understanding was that she would sit on the porch of her mother's house or apartment in Rock Island, and that he would walk by, and I guess she caught his eye, and one day he invited her out for ice cream, and that's I think how they met. She was a traditional woman in those days, the sense that I know it's not popular today, but she saw her role as a home engineer, home manager, and she deferred to Dad on most decisions. But I think it could be said, because he brought people in from Latin America and all over the world, brought them to the house, and that she was probably one of his best salespeople in that respect, because everybody loved her. And she created an environment in the home that allowed him to do the work the way he wanted to, which was travel for sometimes a couple months at a time. He'd be gone. And she never pushed back on that. And I think in that sense, she allowed him to do what he really wanted to do and supported him in that. They were very different but complementary personalities.
When Bandag first started, it was just started in a old building somewhere. And she worked really hard helping Roy with things. And
my dad would come home and blow up about something that we thought was kind of trivial. But we never knew what was going on. I mean, I can't imagine how difficult it was to start this company when people would come in and say, hey, basically, you're bankrupt, game over. He would get an airplane and go raise $50,000, and that saved the company. And those people that he got the money from became millionaires.
Well, Brody wrote a letter to Roy, and he was the R&D guy at B.F. Goodrich, as I recall. And he said, I believe you're on to something. I think this is going to really work out for you. He was always thinking of something ahead. He was, I suppose, a disruptor. Actually, he disrupted a whole industry. There was a convention every year in Louisville for retreaders. And when they first started going, they just had this little booth space. And the hot cappers, the old line, had the big spaces and all the nice stuff, And he says every year we got a little bigger and they got a little smaller. Finally, they all went out of business. Yeah. Roy came in about once a month and got everything churned up, and then he'd leave again. But other people ran it, and then Roy could do whatever he wanted. He set the tone and the expectations, but he wasn't going to do it for you.
You were hired knowing that you got the A right off the bat. You didn't have to earn it, you had it. And so you brought forth your best effort every day, and you kept that, and it was very inspiring. Each one of them made you feel like you were the same as they were. They treated everyone with such respect and kindness that it made it easy to give it back to them. And it did make everybody who worked there happy to do their job and to give it their best effort every day. The huge number of employees that worked at the company for so long, I think to provide the stability to the community, growth to the community.
Roy figured, if I run a good business and I pay my people, they make the community.
It's made the community stronger, and the educational opportunities, even the opportunities for exposure to the arts, sports, the athletics, so many of those things that they helped implement in our community are something that the citizens, I think, embraced and want to see carry forward.
Roy was an international guy, and I wasn't when I came here at all. I learned a lot from Roy, and I know he took myself and maybe another one or two guys different times on trips, and I just watched him and listened to him to learn, took notes, I really did. It was a real education working for that company, a real education.
I think when he passed away, he had over 10,000 hours in the seat of all of the different airplanes, including jets, helicopters, that sort of thing. So yeah, he was crazy about flying. I think it started out that this was a way for him to fly to South America, and because he liked being in South America, I think he was his own distributor for his pumps in Central and South America. I remember that my dad would be gone for long trips when I was young, and so he'd fly down there in his plane. So he put a lot of hours in a plane, and then we also did, like we'd do family vacations. He'd load all of us, and I remember as a kid flying from Muscatine to Acapulco or someplace like that in a single engine airplane. I just can't imagine that, a bunch of kids, you have to go to the bathroom and you hold it for like, I don't know how many, 6 hours at a crack in an airplane. I mean, at one time Dad brought an ocelot kitten from Central America, and this is a wild animal, and during its, it lived in a house, and then when the cat got to a certain maturity, people who knew animals said, this is a wild jungle animal. I mean, this is, adult phase, it grows to be the size of a bobcat, so it's actually dangerous. And so they said, well, you really should move it to the zoo. It didn't last, but yeah, she loved animals.
Her cats is like her children. Those are like her children more than her boys. You don't touch her cats. She has Charlie, Emily, and Mac. They were all outside cats, stray cats come in, and she loved those cats to death.
She was a fabulous cook. And what I remember is she'd always have a big centerpiece, turkey or ham or roast beef or something. Dad loved roast beef.
And Christmas time, she will cook and cook. She says, I get up at 4 in the morning and I'll cook. Remember, she has polio, and she limped and she walked, and nothing stopped her from doing that.
And I remember these cream puffs she used to make, which she would die for.
Cream puffs, she says she make dozens and dozens of cream puff, and these boys will not come by themselves. They bring their friends. The whole group will come, and they're going out with their hands full, walking out with cream puffs. Yeah.
And she had a chocolate sauce recipe that I think was lost. I don't know where it was, but I've never tasted chocolate sauce like that anywhere in my life after that.
Her generosity was so great, and even people died in the community, and she know of some of people, like young people commit suicide and things like that, and she would say, you know what? Because that's how she read the paper early morning, and said, let's go to the store and get some things for these people and just drop it out there, and she'll give me cash to put in an envelope, and so I'll get the envelope and I'll go over and we'll drop those out to people that she doesn't even know. That's the key word, generosity. Her neighbor, she was old, and he says, Zena, she lives alone. Why can't we start making a meal and take it over? So we used to make a plate and take every afternoon.
And everybody who was in the house, you know, whether it was the housekeeper or her secretary, or we were always included in things, and, you know, birthday celebrations, and she didn't think of herself as being above other people. She never acted that way.
Mrs. Carver and I established a friendship that let me and my children explore some things with her socially, and it was always very rewarding. Her kindness was outstanding.
Carver Pump was Roy Sr.'s first business. He started it in right around 1939, and when I look through the history and some of the letters and documentation we have from that time, it's really amazing. He was a young man, I don't think even 30 years old, and he started this business. And I know the pump business well enough to know that it's not simple to start a pump company. You need to invest in patterns and tooling and have people that understand the pump business. And it's incredible to me that he was able to pull that together as a young man. So he was obviously a very entrepreneurial guy. And Bandag really came along more than a decade later, and it was the success of Carver Pump that allowed Bandag to happen.
Bandag was a very well-established institution when I came in, and it had fantastic people and had a fantastic process. When Dad got it, it was not all sorted out, and he did some Herculean work to get Bandag from a not very robust process to being an extremely robust process. He, one time, was offered, it was a company called Ashland Oil, offered to buy his company for $5 million. And he, I think he agonized about it at that time. You know, it was a much smaller company. But he stayed the course. And of course, financially, I mean, I think that was a very good bet on his part. But it was a gut call.
The personality characteristics of the Carvers in this generation in Muscatine are probably reflected by the institutions that exist. We have the Carver Trust, which is a very charitable organization, and I think that reflects Roy Sr.'s values, and it's something that my family is still involved in today. Carver Pump reflects my grandfather's entrepreneurial spirit.
Never giving in was sort of his unique trait. But the flip side of that was, of course, if things didn't go right, I mean, he could be really, you know, quite tough on people. But I think nobody ever thought he was unfair.
That's why I say she's a giver and a lover. Her generosity just spread. Letters will come in from different countries, and different students will write how, thank you, Mrs. Carver, thank you for your gift, like you said, the college. Yeah, I get to see that, and she'll read, and she will emotionally, you can almost see like tears will drop from her eyes when they let her kids write letters. Like, she loves people so much, and all she was stressing on education. So for the community. If there's a single mom, she wish they can go to school, get an education to build themselves up.
Well, she had a very kind heart, and I guess it's empathy. She was interested in everybody that worked for her or who she would have visit in her home. She was always interested in, what was going on in their life and everything.
A very intelligent, aware woman with a commitment to her family and bringing happiness to all of those.